Hey everyone, this is Jane with Herbal, and in this video, I'm going to share some of my favorite information about the lovely little yellow St. John's wort. Now this is a beautiful plant that many people have researched, especially if you're looking to uplift your mood. And St. John's wort can do that simply by looking at it. And some herbalists and some people who've been using natural remedies and they love to grow medicinal herbs in their garden believe that you can simply sit by a St. John's wort bush, and because of all the beautiful medicinal properties, the bright little yellow flowers, that it will immediately lift your mood simply by being in the energetic field of the amazing St. John's wort. So this is a plant that I am very familiar with. I've used it over the years. It's in a couple of our blends, and it's just one of those plants that is well researched, well studied. And what I like to look at St. John's wort as is a plant that is so beneficial for humans and making them feel in a better mood that it will follow us around. And the reason I say that is because St. John's wort loves to thrive in disturbed soils. So the different places where it really grows and grows crazy is places like in Oregon, where they do a lot of logging, and you will find acres and acres and acres of St. John's wort that will grow in where the soils have been disturbed by the logging, the trucks coming in, the human beings. And this is a plant that grows along roadsides and in meadows, and it's very hardy. And it's a plant that is pest resistant. It's an amazing pollinator. So the butterflies and the bees and all your pollinators will love St. John's wort if you decide to add it into your yard or into your medicinal herb garden, or even just your flower garden. Now, the thing with St. John's wort is it's considered a little bit invasive. So it will grow everywhere you will allow it to grow. So many people that add St. John's wort into their flower garden or herb garden will put it into a pot. So it has a ton of great health benefits. And this was a plant, like I said, that my dad studied. It's in his book, it's in my book, and it's a plant that is an amazing herbal remedy to know about and add into your herbal apothecary, because it is kind of like known as the sunshine plant. It can lift people out of sun-deprived depression. In fact, I think it's called SAD, which is seasonal affective disorder. And this is in many places in the world where they don't have a lot of sunshine. And these plants will thrive there. So if you look at a St. John's wort plant, it has these beautiful, beautiful little yellow flowers. And one of the cool things about it is that if you were to take the flowers, and there's these little flower buds that come with the flowers, they're kind of part of it before they pop out. There's some that are not bloomed, there's some that are fully bloomed. But if you take some petals of the flowers or these flower buds and crush them between your fingers, what's really amazing is that it will turn your fingers red. It will stain your fingers red. In fact, if you were to look at the same St. John's wort tincture or an oil, if you make an herb-infused oil, the tincture and the oil will turn a nice, dark, rich red. And I currently have some St. John's wort tincture in my own herbal home apothecary, because I like to be able to have different herbs in singles that I can just go out, put into a little concoction. You know, of course, all this is based on my own knowledge and what I know about herbs and how they work. But it's really amazing to see a yellow flower that will turn into a red tincture or a red herb-infused oil if you put it into an oil. And that to me is one of the really beautiful things about Mother Nature. So there are a lot of beautiful health benefits to St. John's wort. And the information I share with you is not meant to be medical advice. This is just meant to entertain and educate you. So as always, make sure that you do your own due diligence when it comes to identifying, utilizing, and adding herbal remedies into your home apothecary for yourself and your family. It's always good to have a whole brain full of information so that you can make the right decisions. And if anything, not only do your research in different places where you get information, but check in with a local herbalist that can maybe take you on an herb walk and teach you about the different plants that are growing in your area. In fact, St. John's wort is native to places in Europe and Asia and South Africa, but it now is naturalized all over the world. So South America, North America, Australia, and you will find it growing everywhere. And it's just the most beautiful plant. Now it does grow in little bushes, about 1 to 2 feet tall, but then they spread out and they're just covered in beautiful yellow flowers. Now the time of day you want to collect this is after all the dew has dissipated off. So you don't want to collect the flowers and the top of the plant. You use about 6 inches. So you've got to say you've got a beautiful St. John's wort bush. You want to take about 6 inches off the top. So just clip the 6 inches, which will have leaves, some stem, and then a ton of flowers. You want to get it when it's fully in bloom toward the end of June and the first part of July. Collect it after the dew has dissipated, and then it's got that one little bit of a harvest season when all those flowers are blooming. Then you can take it, put it into your herb infused oil. And then one of my favorites is to put it into a tincture, because once it's tinctured, then you can use it all year long. So that's one of the really great tips that I learned from my dad, is the time of day and the time of year. In fact, St. John's wort blooms around June 24th, which it got its name from John the Baptist, who I believe that it's believed that was his birthday, was June 24th. And that's around the time that this beautiful plant blooms. So some of my favorite health benefits to St. John's wort are what it does for the human body and provides a calming effect. So it's great for mild to moderate depression, and especially for people who live in places where there's not a lot of sunshine. Like I said, you can simply sit by a St. John's wort bush and feel the energy and all the powerful properties just by being in the field of St. John's wort. Now, it's also known as an analgesic, which is really good for pain, and it's really good for cell regeneration. So when you put St. John's wort into an oil and then you put it into a skin salve, you've got something that will heal a wound and cut and scrapes and whatnot, and it's really beneficial for healing, and it's also beneficial for pain. So this would be something really nice to put into a skin salve that would not only go after the pain of a wound, but it would help with cells and their regeneration, and it will speed up the healing process, which there's just so many beautiful things about plants that I love. And this is one of those plants that's been around a long, long time. Almost every old time movie that you might see that has, you know, an apothecary with, like Romeo and Juliet, there's several movies that have been, you know, done of this very famous play. And almost everyone that I've really paid close attention to, when Romeo and Juliet separately and together go visit the friar to get their different poisons and concoctions, I've always seen certain herbs that I can identify, and St. John's wort is always in there, which I really, really love. So I would love to know what you think about St. John's wort. Do you carry it in your herbal apothecary and you source your herbs, the raw herbs, from maybe a bulk place where you can get, you know, herbs? It's kind of hard to grow some of these things depending on where you live. If you live in an apartment or you live in a big city, it can be very difficult to have an herb garden that would allow you to do all this. So there are places that you can find online that have really beautiful organic sourcing for some of these plants, including St. John's wort. And I have personally used some of them. I'll put a link to a couple below that are my favorite. And you can go on and do a little bit of research and kind of start playing around with some of this stuff. So I would love to know if you actually are familiar with St. John's wort in the growing it and identifying it in the wild. It grows everywhere. I've seen places where there are acres and acres and acres of it. And it is just, to me, one of God's gifts to human beings, because it likes to grow in this disturbed soil. And what's the most disturbing factor on Mother Earth? human beings. So it's almost like St. John's wort follows us along and grows up where we are, so that it's like, hey, here I am. I'm here to help you. I'm here to regulate mood. I'm here to bring you out of, mild depression. And I'm here to provide all these health benefits. To me, this is one of the really beautiful, beautiful signs that we are deeply connected to Mother Nature. We're deeply connected to all the healing benefits of what Mother Nature has to offer. And this is where I think a little bit of bravery, a whole lot of research, a whole lot of courage, and a whole lot of confidence comes in when it comes to using plants, plant medicine, and all of the gifts of Mother Nature. So I'd love to know what you think about St. John's wort, and we will see you next time.